Professor Dr. Satish Patil. He has completed MSc PhD in environmental sciences, and at this present time, he as a senior professor of Department of Environmental Science, Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar, Marathwada University, Aurangabad. He has held position as a director, in charge officers, director, head of the department, assessor, advisor, executive member, coordinator. He has 35-year academic and research experience, and other recognition is as a coordinator, freshwater field station at Pathan. President Dr. Baba Saheb Bhimrao Ambedkar Marathwada University Teacher Association Aurangabad, and chairman and member, fellow member, life member, and there are so many positions held in Marathwada University. He has held research credential patents, and number is 06, and research project completed 12th, and research guidance 36 students under his supervision. PhD awarded 29 students, and research work ongoing is 07 student, and conference seminar. There are so many conference seminar attended by him. And there are so many conferences attended by himself, and research publication is 125 national and international research article, and national seminar, 8 national seminar he has attended, 8 national seminar, and international seminar are 4, and there are so many journals, 52 journals, and book published, 16 book published under his supervision, and there are so many editorial journals, and he has employment history is just like June 1991 and 1993 he has hold assistant professor as a assistant professor, and now at this present time he has a senior professor of environmental science in Marathwada University. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. 1 minute.
Wait for a minute, just I'll come to you. एक 2 मिनट रुकिए, I'll come to you. शेयर भी करो. वो नहीं है, पीपीटी है, पीपीटी.
दोनों भी पीडीएफ है सर.
पीपीटी है जी, देख नहीं पा रहे. ये क्या है?
यस सर, 1 मिनट. Orders.
ये क्या है? ये बोला मैंने. एक 2 मिनट रुकिए, जरा लाइन गई है मेरे पास, तो समय दूसरे ऊपर ले रहा हूँ.
जी सर, नो इश्यूज.
Your answer.
Okay, good afternoon all of you. Can you see the screen?
Yes sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon all of you, and respected coordinator of this course, Dr. Madhuri Sawan ma'am, the assistant director, Dr. Rafe, director, Dr. Tarachari Mazan, and all fellow participants. today, I think we'll have a discussion on the two different aspects. One is the IKS in Maharashtra, and second, the IKS and the environmental knowledge systems, that is IKS systems in the environment and IKS. In the first lecture, we'll talk about the Indian knowledge systems in Maharashtra. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir. Visual,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay, okay. Now I'll share it. Please excuse me because I don't have a light electricity over here, but I'm trying it. Okay. So when we are talking about the IKS in Maharashtra, I think we all know what is the IKS, Indian Knowledge Systems, which particularly represents the ancient and traditional knowledge, which is particularly being developed in India over the million years. And we know that this is the way where we are encompassing of understanding the natural world, the human society, and the cosmos as well. And today we know that we are in the age of AI, that is artificial intelligence. But you know that at the same time, we have to think about the absolute intelligence, that is cosmos. And this IKS is not limited to the only the theoretical knowledge, but rather it includes the practical applications. In practical applications, what? Practical applications in agriculture, medicine, architecture. The another best example is the water management and even the social governances. Everything we found this IKS, and it particularly reflects in the holistic understanding of the life integrating the ethical as well as ecological and the spiritual dimensions. It is very, very important. And that is what, whenever we are talking about the Indian knowledge systems, this particularly all knowledge which is being rooted in philosophy, science, art, and even culture. And that is what, whenever we are talking about the philosophy, you know that this knowledge or the IKS which particularly embodies the diverse knowledge traditions and that are deeply being the intervened with the Indian philosophy, science, and the culture, even science, art, and the culture. When we are talking about the philosophy, you know that the ancient philosophical texts, for example, like a Vedas, the Upanishads, and even the Darshanas, which particularly provides an insight into the ethics, ecology, and the human nature relationships, which particularly emphasizing the harmony as well as the sustainability. So that when we are talking about the IKS in science, that too, the traditional scientific knowledge, which particularly includes the astronomy and the metallurgy. These are the two typical examples of IKS in science. Another best example is, you know that the mathematics, mathematical solutions, agriculture, medicine, particularly the Ayurveda medicines, and ecology, which developed through the careful observations and the experimentation. As far as the art is concerned, the artistic practices, which particularly includes the architecture, sculpture, painting, and performing arts, which particularly reflects the environmental consciousness of the nation. That too, particularly when we are talking about the heritage sites in Maharashtra, where we have to have a cultural symbiosis, that is a cultural symbolism, and the aesthetic harmony with the nature, the harmony with the nature. As far as the culture is concerned, you know that the festivals, rituals, as well as the folk traditions, which has been embedded the ecological values and the sustainable practices, such as the scared grooves, water conservation, and even you know that there are many seasonal celebrations, preserving the community knowledge for the generations. Now, all these IKS, what is their relevance with reference to the Maharashtra? That is also very important, because you know that, as I told you that, and we all know that Maharashtra is a rich cultural, historical, and educational heritage, and which is home to the science scholars and the even there are a lot many indigenous practices which we are aware of and which are very routinely doing it, because Maharashtra is a soil of sense which has with a very rich tradition of cultural, historical, and educational heritages, making it a very significant region to explore the Indian knowledge systems. Now, as I told you that the center of learning, Maharashtra is a center of learning, philosophy, and the art for the centuries. And from this ancient century of the, for example, you know that these places like Nashik and Patil, to the historical centers of the art and the literature, the state also has preserved the knowledge across the generations. Particularly, you know that the Naneshwari and the regional forts. There are regional forts, temples, architectures, which showcases this integration of the scientific knowledge, aesthetics, and the ecological awareness, which particularly reflects a sophisticated understanding of engineering, water management, as well as the urban planning also. Now, Maharashtra is a land of sense, scholars, and the indigenous practices, because you know that the Maharashtra has produced the eminent son and the scholars whose teaching that continues to shape up the cultural and ecological consciousness. The saints like Naneshwar, Tukaram, and Namdev, which has emphasized the ethical living, the respect of the nature, community, and nature and the community welfare. Now, the indigenous practice, like for example, the Devrai, that is scared grooves, for irrigation systems, folk arts, which preserve the ecological knowledge, which has preserved the ecological knowledge and sustainable living practices. The local crafts, like for example, like agricultural local crafts and the agricultural methods, which has a very typical agricultural methods which has been adopted in Maharashtra, and the traditional festival which reflects a deep consciousness with the nature and the seasonal cycles, passing on the wisdom from generation to generations. Now, wherever we are talking about what is the objective of this the lecture, because we know that when we are the purpose when we are particularly stick up with the purpose of the IKS in Maharashtra, the whole purpose is to explore the rich heritage of Maharashtra to understand the traditional practices and highlight their contemporary relevance. Now, when we are talking about the exploring heritage of IKS in Maharashtra, we all know that Maharashtra is home to the centuries old language knowledge systems that reflects to the state's rich cultural, philosophical, and ecological heritage. Now, when we are talking about the practices in philosophy, arts, and sciences, there are many studies which has been carried out in these areas. When we are talking about the philosophy, for example, teaching of saints like a Dhaneshwar and Tukaram on ethics, human nature relations, and the spiritual ecology is a very rich heritage of Maharashtra. Now, as far as the teaching is concerned, as far as the art is concerned, you know that folk arts, architecture, and cultural expressions that particularly incorporates the ecological and philosophical principles. Now, even Maharashtra is known for the Ayurveda because we have a traditional knowledge, particularly from from the tribal communities in Maharashtra, because you know that Maharashtra is known for the traditional knowledge in agriculture, water management, like a flood irrigation, steep wells, and even there are many methodological practices like Ayurveda, and even now there are many experiments which are going on to trap the renewable energy, renewable energies, and that is what this is very important. And this exploration, which particularly highlights the high philosophy, how philosophy, art, and science, which were interconnected and applied in daily for the sustainable living. That is what it is very important. Now, when we are talking about their relevance in 21st century, we know that the Maharashtra is known for the sustainable agriculture practices and the water management techniques, which can add the climate and the environmental challenges. Now, the philosophical and the ethical teachings, this fosters a community cohesion, mindfulness, and eco-consciousness behavior. And another very important thing is, as I told you, like a folk, arts, festivals, and rituals, they provide a model for the cultural community and the environmental awareness. So understanding all these practices, which equips between the which equips the learners to integrate the traditional wisdom with the modern solutions for the sustainable development of this. And that is what it is very important. Now, there are many traditions in Maharashtra. The Maharashtra is known for many traditions. Like there are many early settlements and the trade centers and the cultural learning hubs also in Maharashtra we found, which can be called as the IKS in Maharashtra. Because you know that, as I told you, that Maharashtra has a very long and rich history of knowledge systems, which has been shaped by the early settlements, trade, and even cultural exchanges. So these all ancient traditions, they refer to the blend of the practical wisdom, scientific inquiry, and the philosophical thoughts, which has laid a foundation of the region by the intellectual and the cultural heritages. Now, when we are talking about the settlements, you know that, for example, the ancient settlements in Maharashtra, such as the Paitan, Nasik, Pratishthan, Nagari, modern day we call it as a Pune. These are the centers of learning, administration, and trade. Now, these settlements were well planned and integrated with the natural resources also, showing the knowledge of the urban planning, water management, and sustainable living. So these community has developed agriculture, craft, and even the governance. Now Maharashtra is also known for its trading. Maharashtra is well versed, and this Maharashtra region is found to be a very strategic location which is being facilitated trade with the other parts of the India and abroad. Like for example, there are trading centers like a Konkan port, Deccan Plateau towns, which has enabled the dissemination of the knowledge, in particular in the metallurgy, art, navigation, and agriculture. So the prosperity of all these sectors, all these centers which have supported the learning hubs, libraries, and center of scholarships, center of excellence that we call. Now, Maharashtra is a land where we know that it is a land of cultural learning hubs. Particularly, you know that Maharashtra is also very famous for the Gurukuls education system, Monsantos, Monsanteries, and even temples, which acted as a center of philosophical, scientific, and the artistic education. It is a hub which is being nurtured the scholar saints and the artists, which are preserving a knowledge in literature, music, architecture, even astrology, and medicines. Medicines like Ayurveda, where we normally found everywhere. And that is what the Maharashtra is known for. Now, the biggest thing is that in Maharashtra there are Buddhist learning centers. And as I told you that Maharashtra is the home of all the most important Buddhist learning centers in India, which has played a very vital role in preserving the knowledge, philosophy, and art. Knowledge, philosophy, and the art. And that is what these centers were most, these centers are not only religious hub, but also spaces for education, cultural heritage, and the artistic expressions also, which particularly reflects the integration of spirituality with the intellectual and creative pursuits. The best example is Ajanta caves, Ellora caves, and even the Canary caves. These are found to be centers of the knowledge and the art. For example, the Ajanta caves, which are renowned for the rock cut architecture, murals, and sculptures, dating from the 2nd century of BC to the 480 CE. And that is what these caves, they have served as a monastic learning centers for the Buddhist monks, providing the education in the Buddhist philosophy, ethics, meditation, and even art. And that is what the morals, the morals which in Ajanta caves, they give certain lessons, and they also give certain historical events, illustrating the combination of what, that is storytelling and the pedagogy in the ancient times, in the ancient India. Another example is of Ellora caves. The Ellora caves you know that it is a World Heritage Site, which represents a unique, the confluence of the Buddhist, Hindu, and Jain tradition. Buddhist, Hindu, and Jain tradition. And the Buddhist caves at Ellora, which has been found to be functional in the monastic complexes with the meditation halls, assembly, and these are the spaces of the big spaces and the even libraries also. So that they reflected the knowledge, advanced knowledge of the architecture, rock cutting engineering, and the iconography that too. which demonstrates how learning and creativity which were nurtured in harmony with the nature. Now, another third example is of, that we all know that Canary Caves in Mumbai, which are located in Sanjay Gandhi National Park, which were actively formed in the 1st century of the BC to the 10th century of CE, and they have served a center for learning, meditation, and even the trade-related administrations, connecting the knowledge with the practical aspects of the daily life. So these caves, they all contain the inspirations, inscriptions, stoops, and even the classrooms, highlighting the teaching methodologies, student accommodation, and even the how to manage the resources. They're all symbol in this. And that is what it is very, very important. Now, we know that there are many universities and Gurukul institutions in Maharashtra, which normally are found to be a rich legacy of the formal and informal education systems, which has been particularly shaped by the local Gurukuls and inspired by the pan-Indian universities like Nalanda and Takshashila. So these systems were nurtured the scholars, philosophers, and even the artists, which has played a very important role in preserving and transforming the Indian knowledge systems. Now, we all know that. We know the influence of Nalanda. That to Nalanda University. Although Nalanda was located in the present day in Bihar, its selectivity which has been influenced the extended across the India, including Maharashtra. And Maharashtra, which has contributed students, teachers, and the ideas to this renowned center of learning, connecting the regional languages knowledge with the broader Indian intellectual traditions. And you know that Nalanda is a very typical model of structured education, residential learning, and as you know that the interdisciplinary study, which has particularly inspired a local educational practices, emphasizing the philosophy, astronomy, medicines, and literature. Now, there are many local Gurukul traditions which we also observed, and these Gurukul systems in Maharashtra, which has been emphasized a residential and experimental learning, where the students, they lived with the teacher in natural surroundings. Students live with the teacher in natural surroundings. And these Gurukuls, they taught a Vedic knowledge, philosophy, art, science, and even the material skills also. Now, you know that even they taught us a marital school also, blending the ethical and the ecological educations. And you know that students, those who get learned through these observations, dialogue, and the practical applications, they are fostering a holistic understanding of the life and the nature. Now, you know that there's a better integration, the best integration of the knowledge and the culture in Maharashtra. Like schools like a Gurukul and the universities, they promote interdisciplinary learning, combining the spiritual, scientific, and the cultural heritage. For example, the activities like agriculture, crafts, meditation, and the study of the sculptures, which has endorsed students the understood the sustainability, ethics, and the common values. So these all traditions, they preserved a local ecological knowledge, medicinal practices, and the art forms, which remain relevant in modern education and in sustainable living pattern. That is very, very important. Now, you know that when we are talking about the Bhakti movement in Maharashtra, which is also a IKS, a rich heritage of Maharashtra. You know that the Bhakti movement in Maharashtra, which was spiritual and cultural heritage that been deeply influenced in the Indian knowledge systems. It is being comprised, that the devotion, social equality, and the ethical living, and even the ecological sacrifices, that to ecological awareness also, blending the philosophy, literature, and the community practices. As I told you that, as far as the sense of Maharashtra is concerned, as we all know that, the Maharashtra is known for the many of the saints, and most of the influential saints of the Maharashtra at the Bhakti tradition is the Jnaneshwar, Tukaram, and Namdev. They have influenced a lot in Maharashtra. You know that, for example, Jnaneshwar, who born in 1275 and died at the age of 21 in 1296. See, they authored the Jnaneshwari, a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, making a spiritual knowledge which is accessible to all, and his teaching which has been emphasized, the inner wisdom, ethical living, and the harmony with the nature. The another saint is Tukaram. We all know that, who born in 1608 and died in 1619. See, which is known for his Abhangas, poems, and Tukaram is focused on the devotions, social justice, and humanity, promoting the values that has been strengthened the community bond and the respect of life for life. And then afterwards, a Namdeva, who born in 1270 and died in 1350. And his thought, though he has devotional songs of, that the teachings, this Namdev has been stressed on the universal values, universal love, services, and the ethical conduct, which are guiding the people towards the spiritual and the ecological consciousness. Now, there are many centers for the spiritual and social knowledge. There are many contributions which has been given by the state like Maharashtra in spiritual and social knowledge. For example, the Bhakti sense, which has been contributed to the IKS by spiritual knowledge, simplifying the complex philosophical concepts to make them into accessible to the common people. Social knowledge, challenging the social welfare, social hierarchies, promoting the equalities, and even encouraging the collective responsibility. And the most important part, that the ecological awareness, because that they have said, these saints have created ecological awareness. Many songs they taught us towards the respect for the rivers, trees, and animals, demonstrating an early form of the environmental ethics. Now, Maharashtra has a very rich cultural legacy, and that too, when we are talking about the Bhakti movement, which is being influenced by literature, folk, art, music, and even festivals in Maharashtra, though they are found for to be devoted songs like Abhangas and the community gatherings. But the most important thing is that the ecological and ethical teachings, they are also being transmitted orally, ensuring that the preservation of the traditional knowledge and the sustainable practices has a very vital importance. Now, when we are talking about the philosophical thoughts in Maharashtra, which is very, very important for, because that, like Maharashtra is known for this Advaita philosophy, which is a non-dualism. We call it a non-dualism, is a key philosophical traditions in Maharashtra, which has been influenced by Adi Shankaracharya. And it emphasizes the unity of the individual and universal consciousness. Individual and the universal consciousness. And that is what the Advaita philosophy reaches to what? Reaches to the self-realization and the inner wisdom as the path to the liberation. It also reaches to the harmony with the nature and the well-beings. And it has influenced the spiritual practices, ethical living, and the cultural norms across the Maharashtra. Now, you know that the Maharashtra is also known for the Varkari Sampradaya. And you know that Varkari Sampradaya, when we are talking about the Varkari Sampradaya, it is a devotional movement which is being centered at the Lord Vithoba of the Pandharpur, and which is being combines the philosophy, devotion, and community participations. So the key features of this Varkari Sampradaya, you know that bhakti and the moral teachings from the saints like Dhaneshwar and the Tukaram, and even you know that many people, they used to go for the waris. We call it the pilgrimages waris, which promote the social cohesion and spiritual disciplines. Now, the most important, but such kind of waris are known for the ethical and ecological awareness, emphasizing the simplicity, respect for the nature, and the community welfare. Apart from that, there are many spiritual traditions which has been followed in Maharashtra. And you know that particularly the spiritual traditions, they integrate the yoga, meditation, and ethical living. So these practices, normally they encourage the mindfulness, compassion, and even sustainability, which aligns the personal growth with the ecological balance. And through such kind of activities, there is a transmission of knowledge through the oral and practical teachings, fostering a living tradition of the philosophical inquiry as well as environmental awareness to that to see. Now, Maharashtra is known for the classical literature, works like Dhaneshwari, Avangas, and even Sant Sahityas. For example, Dhaneshwari, which is being written by the Sant Dhaneshwar during the age of 21, which is a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita in Marathi, making a very complex philosophical ideas which are accessible to the common people. For example, look at the explanation of this Advaita philosophy and the spiritual ethics, as well as the self-realization, devotion, and the moral conduct, and the integration of the nature, community life, and spirituality, which reflects the early ecological consciousness. Even Maharashtra is known for Abhangas. And these are the devotional songs which have been composed by the saints like Tukaram and the Namdev, forming a major history and the musical tradition in Maharashtra. Then the Sant Sahitya, that is Sant literature, but we are observing it. And this is also very, very important part where we here in Maharashtra, like a Sant Sahitya, which encompasses the writings of various sants and the poets, which are blending the devotions, philosophy, and the social commentary, which particularly features the engagement of the community with the harmony, equality, and the ethical thinking, as well as the vernacular languages to ensure the knowledge which is widely acceptable, and the local costumes, festivals, and the ecological the practices, how to perform into it. Now, when we're talking about the oral traditions, in Maharashtra, like a povada, tamasha, storytelling, folk tales, and even as a which are the carrier of knowledge. The knowledge which is being disseminated through different activities like a povada. We all know that povada is a form of the ballad or heroic song that narrates the deeds of historical figures, warriors, and even the social events. Now, the other is tamasha. We all know that tamasha is a traditional folk, that is a folk theater form combining a music, dance, and storytelling. It's a combination of music, dance, and storytelling. This signifies conveying the local moral and cultural knowledge as an entertaining and the memorable ways, and also promoting the community engagement and the collective learning. These tamashas normally are being performed in local languages with the local ecological and agricultural themes. Which normally improves our teaching and the sustainable practices. Now, Maharashtra is known also for storytelling and the folks, because you know that the traditional knowledge of the translation of practical knowledge to agriculture, health, and the social reforms, that can be done through storytelling, and the preservation of ecological and ethical principles, which are often being illustrated through the algorithm like a innovating animals by involving the animals, forest, and even rivers. So there are many intergenerational learning practices which are also going on in Maharashtra, ensuring the continuity of the local traditions and the indigenous knowledge. Now, you know that when we are talking about the agriculture, Maharashtra is known for its traditional agriculture practices. It is known also for the crop diversity and the seed preservation, because you know that farmers of Maharashtra, though they are historically practicing the agriculture, but now you know that Maharashtra is going for organic farming, mixed cropping, and even saturated soil enrichments also being done, minimizing the reliance on the chemical inputs. For example, use of use of cow dung, compost, and even green manures to maintain the soil fertility is a common practice in Maharashtra, which is being performed very properly. Then a contour farming and water harvesting, which is also going on in Maharashtra with a significant results. And now there are practices which are going on, integration of the livestock and the crop, promoting a sustainable farm ecosystems into the agriculture. Maharashtra is also practicing a crop diversity, which is also very, very important, because you know that Maharashtra's farmers, they cultivated a variety of crops, ensuring that the ecological balance and the food security practices are to be ensured. For example, the intercropping and the crop rotations, which are being practiced in order to reduce the pest and the soil degradation. Even the preservation of the local and the indigenous crop varieties, which are also going on, which are resilient to climate variations. And you know that we are trying to maintain the seed diversity, contributing to long-term agricultural sustainability. Now, there are many labs which are being established to preserve the seeds, because seed preservation was a critical knowledge practice which has been practiced in Maharashtra, because you know that Maharashtra is a seed hub, which provides a seed to the entire India and even export to the other countries. Now, you know that when we are talking about the water management systems in Maharashtra, these, you know that Maharashtra has a tradition of innovative and sustainable water management systems, which are particularly reflecting a practical wisdom of the local communities. And these systems, which are being developed over the centuries, from an important part of the Indian knowledge system, demonstrating efficient use of the water, how to balance the ecosystems, that is ecological balance, and the community participations. Maharashtra is known for the flood irrigation, which is a community managed flood irrigation. Flood irrigation is a community engaged irrigation systems, primarily being used in the northern Maharashtra, because you know that construction of low, large, and even low-lying these embankments, we call it floods, in order to store the water and distribute the water, it is being used. And you know that these flood systems, which has proved to be enhancing the soil fertility and crop yield also. Now, in Maharashtra, there are so many step wells, though they are found to be step wells in the form of walls or the bore wells, and even tanks. But you know that Maharashtra is known for the traditional water distribution systems. That is, we call it, even Maharashtra is known for the watershed practices. Construction of check dams, contours, trenches, and even percolation tanks to conserve the rainwater harvesting, which is practiced effectively in Maharashtra. Even planting of trees and the vegetation along the water canals to prevent the soil erosion and ensure the groundwater recharge, which is also being practiced very effectively. And you know that the community participation, which is being always taken into considerations in order to ensure the maintenance, sustainability, and the low-term ecological balance. That is very, very important part that we are doing for. Now, Maharashtra has a very rich heritage of medical practices, medicines in Maharashtra, because Maharashtra has a very rich traditional medicines forming a key part of the Indian knowledge system. And you know that the practices which particularly combines the Ayurveda, the folk healing, and even the tribal knowledge, medical knowledge, which particularly reflects the centuries of observations and experimentation and the ecological understanding, so that the highlight of the all holistic health and the preventive care and the sustainable the use of the natural resources are very, very important, which is being we found in Maharashtra. For example, the Ayurveda, which is an ancient Indian system for the medicine, which has been widely practiced in the entire Maharashtra, which emphasizes, particular emphasis which is on the balance of the body, mind, and even the environment for overall well-being. Because you know that in this Ayurveda, there is use of herbs, oils, and natural remedies for the preservation and the treatment of the diseases. And also, you know that there is integration with the diet, lifestyle, and the seasonal routines, which are being ensuring a sustainable approach to the health. Now, there is also a folk healing, what we observe, like a Vaidyas and the herbalist, Vaidyas and herbalists, which normally they used to provide a jadiputty through which effective treatment can be given. Now, as far as the traditional knowledge is concerned, that is traditional medical knowledge is concerned, you that the tribal communities in Maharashtra, they maintain a unique knowledge for the forest flora and fauna for the medicines. Because you know that identification and preservation of the herbal medicines for physical and mental health, it has been practiced here. And there is also use of the scaled grooves and the forest as the natural pharmacies, emphasizing the conservation and even the knowledge which we found, that is with the rituals, spiritual practices, and the sustainable harvesting, which ensures the ecological balance as such. Now, you know that Maharashtra is also known for using of Panchang and the traditional astronomical observations. Like other states, Maharashtra has a very rich tradition of the astronomical knowledge and the calendrical systems, forming an art of, there is an integral part of the Indian knowledge systems. And these systems, which are particularly gained agricultural religion, observations, navigation, and community life, reflecting an advanced understanding and ecological movement and even timekeeping. So that use of Panchang, we all know that, which is a traditional Hindu almanac, which is being used extensively in the Maharashtra, which certainly provides information on the tithis, nakshatras, festivals, and the auspicious timings. These Panchangas, which particularly helps to communicate the plan of agricultural activities, rituals, and social events according to the celestial pattern. And this also integrates astronomical calculations with the ethical and the cultural guidance, linking the science and technology with the daily life. Now, there are many traditional astronomical observations, but we observe, because you know that use of observations, the use of observations, for example, like a sundials and water clocks, they have been used to measure the time and the celestial events. And even the preservation of the oral and the written text, which are containing the calculations, predictions, and even guidelines by the community well-being, is also being done. So these all have integration with the daily life. How to live, that is how to live a life. This is towards the way of life, living life. Now, we all know that Ajanta and Ellora caves, the knowledge of these caves in art, philosophy, spirituality, and agriculture, architecture, that we all know. For example, Ajanta caves and Ellora caves in Maharashtra, they are all among the most remarkable examples of the Indian knowledge system, which are being preserved in art, spirituality, and architecture. So these all rock cuts, monuments, they reflect the religious, divine, the aesthetic excellence, and the scientific understanding of the construction, making a living repositories of the knowledge. The typical example of Ajanta caves is that Ajanta caves is, that we all know, we found since 2nd century, which are being renowned for their murals and the frisons illustrating the Buddhist teaching and the Jakarta's tale and the moral lessons. There's also, we could find there integration of art with the spiritual instructions, allowing a devotees to learn a philosophy through the visual storytelling. There are also advanced rock cut architectures which are demonstrating the knowledge of geometry, structural stability, and the acoustics. Ellora Caves is a very typical example of sculptures and carvings which embodies the religious, philosophical, and the ethical ideas. The monastic complexes, assembly halls, and chaitras, they show a sophisticated planning and architectural language. So there's the integration of the ancient beauty with the spiritual function. They are all reflecting the holistic understanding of the human nature and the consumers. Now, the knowledge which particularly being embedded in the architecture and spirituality, both in Ajanta and Ellora, these are the two typical examples where we found that there is architecture and spirituality also. They are all both we can observe over there. Now, the other part is we all know that folk arts and the planning in the painting in Maharashtra, like a folk art, which is being a traditional tribal art from the Warli community of the southern Maharashtra. We call it the Warli painting. Then there is a Paithani weaving, which are originating from the Paithan in Aurangabad district, that is a Sambhajinagar district, which are renowned for the Indian design, which is being inspired by the nature, which particularly reflects the knowledge of dyeing, weaving, and the sustainable textile production, as well as the traditional the craftsmanship. Now, Maharashtra is a big hub of handicrafts, which particularly includes the metalworks, poetry, wooden toys, and even the embroidery. It is known for that. Now, the most important part, Maharashtra is known for Lavani, Ovada, Kirtan as a knowledge and the social education tools. Because you know that Lavani is a traditional folk dance, as I told you that, with the muscle form of the and the muscle form of the Maharashtra. That is all we normally found. But you know that combining all these rhythms, the storytellings and the experience, this expressive performance, they are all conveying the social messages. They are all conveying the social messages. And these all themes, they are often being include the moral values, historical events, and even the social norms, what we normally used to observe. Such kind of Lavanies we normally used to provide a platform for the community engagement and the cultural certainty or a cultural continuity, which especially in the rural areas. The other typical example is of Povada, which is being a ballad or the heroic song, which particularly narrating the deeds of historical figures and the local heroes, which preserves, for example, the history, ethics, and the social lessons through the oral performance. Now, there is another tradition that what we could observe is of Kirtana. Kirtan. Kirtan is a devotional musical performance that normally is found to be a spiritual and ethical knowledge centers, which particularly combines a narrations, music, and audience participation, making learning engaging easily. These all Kirtan performs the value of the compassion, social harmony, and the community responsibility. All these kirtanas, they normally used to felicitate and environment, oral transmission of philosophy, folk, and even the ecological awareness. That is very, very important part. Now, Maharashtra is also known for its festivals and cultural practices. Because the festival and cultural practice in Maharashtra, they are all living expressions of the Indian knowledge systems, integrating the spirituality, community values, ecological awareness, and they all play a very important key role in providing a heritage, social cohesion, and the ethical teaching also. Now, the festival like a Ganesh festival, what we observed a week back, that we normally used to give a honor to the Lord Ganesha, symbolizing a wisdom, prosperity, and the new beginnings. New beginnings. This also ensures the community participation, social bonding, and the ethical values, and also promotes eco-consciousness practices in the modern celebrations. Now, you know that there are Wari pilgrimage. We normally call Wari pilgrimage is that is Wari to the Pandharpur, which is we normally used to found the centuries old tradition, which are linked to the Warkari Sampradaya. In this Warkari Wari, normally devotees they undertake a spiritual journey on the food, fostering the disciplines, devotion, and the social equality also. Now, there are many cultural integrations which are being performed in Maharashtra, which particularly reflects the integration of the regional traditions, religion, and social harmony, or even social learning, which particularly promotes ethical living and the ecological awareness, as well as the community welfare also. Now, as far as sustainability and environment in Maharashtra is concerned, Maharashtra is having a traditional practice which reflects a professional understanding of the ecology and the sustainability, forming an essential part of the Indian knowledge system. The ecological wisdoms in agriculture, for example, like a traditional farming practices such as mixed cropping, crop rotation, and even organic farming, which has ensured a soil fertility, pest control, and the biodiversity maintenance. So that all these, along with this, there are seed preservation practices and the local crop varieties. They support resilience to the crop and the climate variability. Now, Maharashtra is also very known for the water management systems, because you know that the indigenous systems like a flood irrigation, step well irrigation, and even the tanks or tank irrigation. This is very common in Maharashtra, because you know that in such kind of activities, the community participation which is being engaged or which needs to be ensured for its equitable use, maintenance, and the sustainability. Maharashtra is having at about 26% of forest cover, and there are many forest and resource conservation activities which are going on, like scaled grooves, non-violence, and culture practices which have been promoted, the respect of the nature, respect for the nature. And that is what Maharashtra is having a very rich tradition of what? The integration with the festivals and the art. This is very, very important part that the Maharashtra is known for. Now, when we are talking about the knowledge that to Indian national education policy, how to link up with the knowledge, because you know that now we are in the age of NEP 2020, which particularly emphasizes the integrating the IKS in the education, that was skill, because you know that when we are talking about the integration of IKS in the education system, we have to include philosophy, classical literature, folk, arts, traditional sciences, and the ecological knowledge in schools and the higher education systems. Even though we have to use the local temple, the local examples, and the heritage sites such as Ajanta and Ellora caves, Bhakti literature, and even traditional water systems, which we have to include into curriculum. Then there's a holistic and multidisciplinary education should be there to support interdisciplinary studies, allowing to integrate the IKS with the modern sciences, technology, and the ecological studies, that is environmental studies. It is also very important that when we are talking about the NEP 2020, there should be teachers training and the resource development. That is also very important. And the communities and the cultural engagement that needs to be carried out very deliberately. That is very, very important part of it. Now, we know that the healthcare relevance of the Indian knowledge systems in Maharashtra, like yoga, Ayurveda, and naturopathy, which is a very important part of your prescription now. We all know the benefits of yoga. We are experimenting Ayurveda. And even there are many peoples who are attracted towards naturopathies. Now we have to integrate our nature with the modern healthcare, because there are many traditional practices which complements the modern medicines, providing a preventive care and holistic health solutions for this. Now, as per the indigenous innovations and the technology and indigenous innovations Maharashtra is concerned, Maharashtra is known for their local crafts and artificial technology, artisanal technology. And this traditional craft, for example, Paithani weaving, metalwork, pottery, and even the Varli paint, which is the innovative technologies for design, durability, and the aesthetics that we should encourage. Even the agriculture tools, use of agricultural tools and techniques. Now we are using a drone technology into the agriculture every time. And that is what, while using all these technology, for example, whenever we want to do for the modern agricultural practices, we have to use the renewable energy sources, such as the water mills, biomass, which particularly amplifies the eco-friendly technology. and the construction of eco-consciousness dwellings, which includes the stone and the mud houses, and which demonstrates the climate adapted and heritage knowledge. Now, tourism and the heritage conservation in Maharashtra has a very vital importance, because you know that Maharashtra is known for the tourism capital of the India. Because you know that Maharashtra has a very rich heritage in art, architecture, cultural and traditional knowledge, which certainly provides numerous opportunities for tourism and the heritage conservation system. Like there are many several concepts which are going on into the contemporary society as far as the IKS is concerned, like ecotourism, which promotes a responsible travel to meet out to meet the natural areas, emphasizing conservation, education, and the community involvement. This particularly highlights a forest, wildlife sanctuaries, and even the riverine ecosystems. India, Maharashtra is also found to be a culture of tourism here, cultural tourism, which particularly focus on the Ajanta and Ellora caves, forts, that is also fort, temples, and folk arts. Now, there are many practices which are going on to have a preservation of heritages in order to protect the ancient architecture, monuments, and even the artifacts. The efforts are going on to save the sites through documentation, restoration, and sustainable practices. Now, it is very important in order to preserve the oral traditions, folk arts, and the indigenous sciences. It is very, very important, because Maharashtra's IKS, which particularly encompassing the philosophy, art, and agriculture, which I told you that not only this but also healthcare and the ecological practices, which faces the indigenous threats due to the modernization, urbanization, and even the neglect. That is very important, and that is what modernization and the urbanization is very important part, where the Maharashtra is known for. It is very important that we should neglect oral traditions, and we should be very environmental and resource consciousness, because you know that the environmental resources that needs to be preserved, there are many pressures, resource and environmental pressure on us, and that is what the cultural harmonization is very, very important in the country, in the states like Maharashtra. There are many government initiatives and academic roles which are being defined in order to preserve the IKS. For example, when we are talking about the preservation of oral traditions, like folk songs, storytelling, and even the povadas and tamashas, which are historical, ethical, and even cultural knowledge, gives them cultural knowledge to us. Folk arts and the crafts is also a rich heritage of Maharashtra, and the indigenous science and knowledges, which particularly includes the knowledge in agriculture, water management, medicines, astronomy, and agriculture, the architecture. There is a lot of research which is needed to the validate, to validate, adapt, and integrate the IKS with the modern sciences. Now, the most important part, the role of technology in documentation, use of technology in documentation that is to be done, because that this is a digital era where we have to record a digital the archives. There should be jazz mapping and the Indian virtual recordings and the online classrooms, which can certainly preserve the knowledge very effectively. Now, when we are talking about the Indian knowledge systems in Maharashtra as such, that we should focus on what? Heritage and cultural practices, like a Bhakti movement, saints like Dhaneshwar and the Tukaram, they should be followed. There are many followers of these saints. We should also encourage the sustainable practices and ecology, where the traditional agriculture, water management practices, and the forest conservation, which reflects the ecological wisdom and the sustainable resource use, as well as that the education system in Maharashtra, education pattern in Maharashtra, and the knowledge transmission, like through the Gurukul systems, local universities, and the modern academic integration, which helps to transmit IKS very effectively. Of course, it has been mentioned in 2020, NEP 2020, which particularly encouraged incorporating the IKS in its modern curriculum. But that documentation and the research, which are found to be very critical to preserve the oral traditions, folk arts, and even integrating indigenous sciences. And the most important part is that the technology, like technology, innovation, and the policy support should be there, because that indigenous technologies, art, crafts, and sustainable innovations, which highlights the practical applications of IKS. And that is what is very, very important, that we should always go for the sustainable living, educational reforms, and cultural diversity. Because that when we are talking about its relevance to the 21st century, relevance of IKS in Maharashtra in 21st century, we have to focus on sustainable living. For example, the traditional practices like agriculture, water management, and the forest conservation practices, promotion, as well as environmental sustainability. These are the priority areas where we need to focus on it. The Ayurvedas, yogas, and the naturopathy, which particularly ensures or they encourages the holistic health, well-being, and the harmony with the nature. And that is what it is very, very important that Maharashtra is known for its cultural identity and the social cohesion. Through the festivals like Ganesh Utsav, performing art, and Bhakti literature, which particularly strengthens the community bonds.
சரி ஏதாவது மவுஸ் ஒரு எக்ஸ்ட்ரா இருக்குமா மவுஸ் என்ன சொல்லி கீழே வாங்கிக்கிறேன் இல்லையா ஜான்கிட்ட சொல்லி வாங்கிக்கிறேன் ஏன் உனக்கு வேண்டுமா
which has a cultural pride. So preserving all these crafts, folks, as well as old traditions, oral traditions, they maintain the regional identity and heritage continuity. So that this IKS all the way provides a framework for its ethical living, social responsibility, and respect for the nature, which particularly fosters the inclusiveness and the sustainable development. I think with this, we'll have a gap of 10 minutes, and then we'll discuss on the IKS Indian knowledge systems and the environment. That I think environment and the Indian knowledge system after the break. If you have any questions, please you can feel free to ask me. Hello.
Any question, participant?
Okay, we'll have a break of 10 minutes and then we'll assemble further. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Hello, sir. Noise is not coming.
So break is 3 minutes.
Hello, good afternoon. Hello,
Yes, sir.
can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, shall we start now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, this second aspect that what we would like to discuss today is the most important topic is that environment and the IKS. As we all know that whenever we are talking about can you see, the screen is moving? No.
No, sir.
Is it
Yes, sir.
okay? Okay. नाही नेला आहे का तिकडे Wait for a minute. I am joining on another PC.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, because some electricity problem is here. तो तिकडे तिकडे घ्यावं लागेल ना. ओके चला.
ओके मला स्क्रीन शेअर करायची आहे ना मला व्हॉट्सअपवर तुम्हाला देतो मी तुमच्या टाकाला होते मला तुमचा नंबर नाही माहिती मला पाठवा मी लगेच पाठवते येस खूप छोटे लाईट आहेत बारीक बारीक का बरं सर का इन को खूप अंतर आहे गरम शेअर केली केलं ना Hello, good afternoon. Hello. Hello.
येस सर आवाज येतो सर.
येतोय ना आवाज?
हो सर येतोय.
स्क्रीन दिसते?
हो दिसतंय सर.
Thank you. Please bear with me. Some electricity problem is here. लाईन बऱ्याच वेळापासून गेलेली आहे. आता एका सिस्टम दुसऱ्या सिस्टम चेंज झालं. So when we are talking about the environment and the Indian knowledge system, it is very, very important. Can you see the screen? Screen display there? Can you see the moving screen?
हो सर दिसते स्क्रीन.
दिसतंय ना? Screen moving येते ना? Okay. Now the second topic that what we would like to discuss is environment and the IKS. So we all know that what is environment? It is nothing but when we that a very elaborate definition of it. Which kind of environment is this? Whether it is a natural environment or cultural environment or social environment. So when we are talking about the natural environment, which particularly refers to the physical world. Physical world is what? Physical world around us. Like air, water, soil, forest, rivers, mountains, flora, fauna. This is all what we call as the natural world. This is what we call as the natural world. And it provides a life support system for all the living beings. म्हणजे काय या सगळ्यांना आम्हाला this is all a life supporting system. Natural environment is our life supporting systems. Second type of environment is what we call as a cultural environment, which is particularly, we know that, which creates a traditions, values, languages, costumes, art, architecture, and the heritage that shapes the human identity and even know that the collective behavior of the human beings. Now, when we are talking about the social environment, which consists of the human relations, their relationship, community, institutions, their norms, and the social structures that particularly influences the ways the individual interact and coexist with each other. That is called as the environment. And that is what the definition of the environment, when we are talking about that, it is very, very important that what is the context, whether it is a natural, whether it is a cultural, or whether it is a social. And that is what, whenever we are talking the Indian knowledge systems, that we all know that. As I told you that in the earlier lecture, the IKS is nothing but what? It refers to the traditional, indigenous, and holistic knowledge. It refers to the traditional, indigenous, and holistic knowledge based in India, which is being developed through the centuries of observations, practices, and wisdom. Now, it covers a diverse field. IKS in environment covers a diverse field in like environmental management, Ayurveda, yoga, astronomy, agriculture, architecture, as well as philosophy and spirituality. Now, the IKS has its principle which is being rooted in Prakriti Purusha Samvada. Prakriti Purusha Samveda. That is nothing but harmony with the nature and the human beings. And that is what it emphasizes. It emphasizes sustainability, balance, and respect for all life forms. And that is what it has a very vital importance of studying the intersection of the environment and IKS. Because you know that whenever we are talking about the IKS environment, we normally used to refer the terms like a sustainable practices. Because you know that, let us take an example of ancient water harvesting. For example, step wells, tanks, and even traditional farming practices. Like earlier, there was mixed cropping, organic farming, organic manures, use of organic manures, and even the forest conservation, which certainly provide eco-friendly solutions to modern crises. And that is what there's a holistic understanding that the IKS integrates a science, spirituality, and the ethics, offering the comprehensive ways to manage natural and social resources. And that is what the importance of this IKS in environment is. For example, we have to have a social climate resilience and the cultural continuity as well as the policy relevance. So, as far as the climate resilience is concerned, we all know that the indigenous knowledge, which particularly helps to adapt to changing climate through the local, low cost, and time tested practices. In cultural community, you know that cultural community normally used to preserve India's heritage while promoting the environmental stewardship. And when we are talking about the policy relevance, which normally encourages a blending modern sciences with the traditional wisdom of the effective environmental governance, and that is what it is very very important. So that when we are talking about the concept of environment through the uh, Indian thought, concept of environment in Indian thought, like a Prakriti as a divine, we call it a Prakriti as a nature, as a divine. In Indian philosophy, that we all know that Prakriti is considered scared and eternal, which is being seen as in the manifestation of the divine energy sustaining the life and the universe. So the texts like the Rigveda and Upanishad, they normally used to describe the rivers, trees, mountains, sun, earth as a god or goddess which is to be respected and protected. And the environment is not just a resource, but it is a living spiritual entity. Environment is not a resource, it is a living spiritual entity. And that is what the human, when we call it as a human as a part of nature, which is not separate. Because you know that the ancient Indian traditions, which particularly emphasizes, for example, the interdependence. We are all interdependent. We are living in the tropic status. Like humans, we all depend on animals. Animals depend on plants. Plants and the natural resources which are being connected and get together. So that this concept of Vasudeva Kutumbakam, Vasudeva Kutumbakam, the world is one family, which reflects the ecological unity, and that is what the exploitation of the nature, which is seen as disturbing the cosmic balance, because you know that the harmony is very essential for human well-being, and the dharma. Dharma is nothing but we call it a duty. Dharma is not something where we call worship to a particular god. Dharma is a duty which includes the ethical responsibility towards all living beings, for all living things. And the third one is what we call as the Panchamahabhutas. We all know that. Which are the Panchamahabhutas? These are all five great elements. And the universe and the human body, which are connected with the five fundamental elements, like a Prithvi, what we call as the earth, which gives us stability, fertility, and nourishment. Then second is Apa, that is we call as Jal. It gives us life, purification, and flow. Third is Agni, we call it the fire. That is the energy, transformation, and warmth. And then there is a Vyaya, that is air. We call it the breathe, which is very much required for breathing, movement, and vitality. And last one is Akash. We call it as a space or the earth, the ether, where it is being connected with expansion, connectivity, consciousness. So like that, these are Panchamahabhutas, like a Prithvi, water, earth, water, fire, air, and the Akash, that is space, which balances among all these elements, which is very vital for the environmental health and the human survival. So that Ayurveda, Yoga, and Vastu Shastra, they are all rooted in maintaining the harmony of the elements. They are rooted in harmony of the elements. Now, as I told you, these are the Panchamahabhutas, where we have seen earth, water, fire, air, and space, and through which all these ecological balance through all these elements which is being done. Because you know the earth, Prithvi is a symbol of stability, as I told you that fertility and the nourishment, which provides a soil, mineral, food, and the shelter for all life forms. We should respect for the land through the practices like a scared groves, tree worship, and sustainable farming. We all know that. We respect, we celebrate every festival, and that is that we respect nature through these festivals. Water, which is source of life, as I told you that, purity and the renewal. These rivers and lakes, they are considered to be scared. Wait for 1 minute. Hello. प्लीज हाँ दिया था मैं लेक्चर में हाँ बोलिए करेक्ट करेक्ट ओके 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 यस ओके ठीक है ओके ओके नहीं टाइम में हमारे पास है सब एवरीथिंग इज देयर Yes. Yes. ठीक है. सर एक मिनट देता हूँ, एक ही मिनट देते देते. सर 844059. हेलो. सर बोला मैंने 844059. 844059. यस. हाँ मेरे लड़के का भेजा मैंने आपको, देख लीजिए. ठीक है ठीक है. ओके. Hello, good afternoon. Sorry, there I had a urgent call. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
Okay, I'm audible. So as we were talking about all these Panchamagutas, the as you know that water is a source of life, purity and renewal. As I told you that fire is represents energy transformation in the light, which is very vital for the warmth, digestion, and the natural cycles like day, night, and the seasons. And the rituals involving the fires symbolize the purification and the cosmic balance. And the air which symbolizes a breath, movement, and the vitality, as well as space. This symbolizes, which represents the expansion, connectivity, and consciousness, which certainly provides a room for the movement of all other elements. Now, there's ecological balance through all these elements that what we could observe, because you know that all the five elements which are interdependent, imbalance in one disturbs the whole system, which disturbs the whole ecosystem. And the ancient Indian wisdom, which particularly teaches us harmony, respect, and sustainable use of all these elements. So this environmental degradation, which particularly reflects the disruption of the elemental balance, and restoring the ecological health, which particularly requires aligning the modern practices with the principles of the Panchamahabhutas. Now, there are many Vedic references to the environment, like a Rigveda's hands on the rivers, forest, and the atmosphere, where we know that rivers they are found to be considered a divine mothers, like a life givers, Let us take example of Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati, Godavari, Haina. They are all the praise to their purity and nourishing the power. And even the forest, they are all seen to be several abode with the gods. They are found to be sources of medicine, food and shelter, and even clear the protection of trees, which was linked with the prosperity. Now even the atmosphere, we call it the Vayu, which is being praised as a vital for the health, survival, which are particularly highlighting the need for the clean air. Now, the most important is that Ajurveda, which emphasizes on the yachanas for the purification. These yachanas were performed to the, we call it the yajna. These all yajnas were performed to maintain the cosmic order, like a Rita and the ecological balance, and the ritual fires. They symbolize the purification of water, air, and surroundings. There is a stress on this, the responsible human actions to avoid the disturbing natural harmony, which has been advocated a sustainable resource use with, without a greed for the over exploitation. And you know that Rigveda, Ajurveda, and Atharvaveda. Atharvaveda, when we talk about the Atharvaveda, which verses on the environmental harmony, calling it is a nurturing mother, which particularly highlights the symbolic relationship among the humans, animals, plants, and the forest, which particularly advocates the peaceful coexistence, health, and prosperity through the respect for the nature, which particularly promotes a ecological well-being, which ensures the social and spiritual well-being of the. See, we know that there is Upanishadic philosophy. In Upanishadic philosophy, we all know the Upanishad, which is a concept of interconnectedness. And you know that these Upanishads, they teach us that the entire universe is provided by a supreme being, what we call the Upanishadam Sarvam. Everything in the universe which is being enveloped by the divine. So it emphasizes the principle of oneness of existence, oneness of the existence, showing the human, animals, plants, rivers, and mountains. They are all part of the integrated whole nature, and that is what this Upanishad encourages the lifestyle for simple living, non-exploitation, and harmony with the nature, which respects excessive materialism and teaches us a sustainable use of the resources so that we have to enjoy through the renovation. Do not covet with the what belongs to others, and that is what is very important. Upanishads. Now there is a Tathyas is Upanishads, that is we call it the ecology of the food chain. Isha Upanishada, Tathya Upanishada. The Tathya Upanishada, what is there? The Tathyatra Upanishada, which represents the idea of Annam Brahma. That is, we call it the Annam Brahma is a food. Food is a divine, and food is the basis form of the life, and that is what to protect the food resource, which is scarce duty, and it describes the ecological cycle from the food being which are being born by food, they live, and into food they enter at the death. That is from, by, and into. So these cycle refers to the food chain, where the interdependence is amongst the soil, plant, animal, and the resources. And that is what it is being called as it is a reverence for the life forms. Upanishads are the reverence for the life forms. So this Upanishad philosophy, which advocates and respect for all life forms, all creatures, which are also seen as a manifestation for the same universal sound. And that is what which are harming nature is harming oneself. For example, let us take example of trees, rivers, mountains, animals, and humans. They are all regarded with the equal reverence on the earth. And that is what this reverence provides a spiritual foundation for the biodiversity, conservation, and ecological balance. Now, there is a connection between the dharma and the ecology. Dharma and the ecology. So, whenever we call it as a dharma, in IKS, the concept of dharma, which is goes beyond the religions, and it refers to the moral and ethical duties. Dharma is nothing but a moral and ethical duties that guide the harmonies, that guides the harmonious living, and it emphasizes the balance, responsibility, and interconnectedness among the human, nature, and the cosmos. So that ecology, when we call it as ecology, it is being viewed with the lens of dharma, which highlights the duty of the humans to protect and nurture the environment. To protect and nurture the environment as a part of what? As a part of the spiritual and social obligations. And that is what dharma and responsibility towards the environment, that is very much required, because you know that dharma encourages what? Dharma encourages individuals, communities to recognize their responsibility in conserving the natural resources. Because you know that, for example, literally protecting the forest, rivers, lands, and even the biodiversity is seen as a scared duty, not a merely an economic or the political choice. But you know that whenever we are talking about uh, the Mother Earth, which reminding humans that expanding her resource irresponsibility, which disturbs the natural order, and that is what following dharma. Following dharma ensures ecological balance and the sustainability, and that is what it is very very important. The second is ahimsa. That is, we call it a non-violence towards the nature. You all know that ahimsa is a central principle of the Indian philosophy. What is usually refers to the non-violence towards the living beings. It also extends to the nature. It includes avoiding unnecessary harm to the plants, animals, water bodies, and even soil. Ahimsa fosters the compassion and the teaches us sustainable lifestyles, promoting the vegetations, organic farming, and even the mindful use of the resources. Then Sarvabhuthita, that is well-being of the creature, all creatures. Sarvabhuthita. So in Upanishad and even in Vedic tradition, which particularly emphasize, it has been emphasized that Sarvabhuta Hita, working for the welfare of the all livings, all beings. The principle of this Sarvabhuta highlights an inclusive vision of what? Where the humans are not above the nature, but they are the part of the nature, and they are part of the larger wave of the life. Caring for animals, protecting their biodiversity, and ensuring the clean air, water, and the food for all the expressions of this value. And that is what it is. We call it a dharma and ecology. They are all together that we should follow. Now, when we are talking about the environmental ethics and epics, it has been properly taught in Ramayana. Because you know that in Ramayana, it has been expressed the forest life of Rama. That is the respect of Rama for the rivers and trees. We all know that. The Indian epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata, along with the stories of the Lord Krishna, which are not only spiritual and cultural treasures, but also rich sources of the environmental wisdom. And they are all highlighted the close relationship between the human and the nature, and the ethical duties of the humans to protect the environment. What Ramayana says. And that is what these narratives, which emphasizes the reverence for the forest, rivers, animals, and the ecological balance, providing a timeless guidance for sustainable living. Ramayana, you know that in Ramayana, what we heard, a life, forest life of Rama, and respect for the nature. Because you know that the Ramayana portraits forests, they are scared at scared spaces, essential to the human life. During his exile, Lord Rama, which lived in harmony with the forest, showing a respect and gratitude towards the nature. And the epic highlights of the importance of the Ramayana like Ganga, Yamuna, Godavari, which are described in purifiers and in the lifelines. Another example is the trees, forest, and the wildlife, which are seen in companion Rama's journey, teaching the humans to value the ecological harmony and live in balance with the natural surroundings. Another example is in Mahabharata. You know that Bhishma's teaching on the nature's conservation that we remember. Because you know that in Mahabharata, the Mahabharata contains the numerous references to the ecological ethics. In the Shanti Parva, this Bhishma emphasizes the duty of the rulers and individuals to protect the trees, forest, and the animals. And he explained that demonstrating the nature, which particularly leads to the societal imbalances, while conserving it to ensure the prosperity and the health. And the epic which conveys that protecting the biodiversity and natural environment or the natural resources is a part of dharma, linking ecological well-being with the social stability. And you know that lastly the Krishna, which is being called as the protector of the ecology, because you know that we all know that the Govardhan episode, Lord Krishna's Govardhan episode, which has been symbolized.
Sir, slide is not moving, sir.
I'm explaining. Krishna's protector of ecology, I'm explaining. Is it moving now? Hello? Is it moving? Can you explain? Can you?
No, sir, no move, sir.
Huh?
This one second slide, introduction, sir.
Only second side is there.
Yes, sir, introduction, sir.
Wait for a minute. Is it moving?
Moving. Moving.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Moving? I think we were talking about the Krishna as a protector of ecology. Am I right? Can you see the screen? See, the Lord Krishna by lifting the Govardhan Parvat to the shelters to shelter the people and cattle from these torrential rains. And Krishna there discouraged the excessive rituals that has been harmed the nature instead of promoted the harmony with it. So that in this episode, the Krishna has taught the villagers to worship the Govardhan hill. Not only Govardhan hill, but the forests in and around that Govardhan Parvat, rivers and the cows, which recognizes the interdependence between the human beings with the animal and the environment. So this story, which reinforces the idea of respecting the nature, respecting the natural elements in life, which are found to be divine. Now, there are many traditional Indian practices, like that Devrai and Devruk, that we know that. That is scared grooves. We normally used to also have a worship to the rivers and worship to the trees. But you know that when we are talking about the scare grooves, which are the patches of forest which are preserved in the name of local deities, which are commonly known as Devrai, Devrai in Maharashtra, and Devarkheda in Karnataka, it is been called. Cutting the trees, hunting it, or disturbing these grooves is strictly being prohibited. And that is what here they serve as a biodiversity hotspots, protecting the rare plants, animals, and the water sources. So these grooves also helps in soil and water conservation, making them the natural heritage sites where the culture and ecology merges. Now, many people they worship the rivers. Rivers in India, which are we call as the lifeline of the country, they are worshipped as the life givers and the godlessness. The rivers like Ganga, Yamuna, Godavari, and Narmada, which are being reversed as a scared mother of who sustain the agriculture, drinking water, and the ecosystem as well. And the rituals like Ganga Aarti expresses the gratitude and respect for the rivers, reminding communities for their duty to keep the rivers clean and flowing. Then there is a tree worships that we all know that. Whether it's a people tree like a Ficus religious or banyan tree or tulsi, these all practices we now used to worship these trees, and these practices which are being ensured the protection of ecologically important species and strengthen the human and nature bonds, strengthen the human and nature bonds. Now, see the agriculture in Indian ecosystem, Indian systems. As we all know that agriculture is the economic backbone of the country, but agriculture in Indian, which has been made the roots in Indian knowledge systems, where the farming was not only an economic activity, but also they are the life. This is the way of life which is to continue with the nature and the sustainability. Ancient practices of the agriculture, which emphasized a harmony with the soil, harmony with the water, animal, and the biodiversity. So that these traditional methods, they have been ensured the long-term productivity and ecological balance and food scarcity with the harmony with the nature. Today we do agriculture with negativity. We are totally disconnected with the soil, water, animal, and even biodiversity. And we have seen what are the net results of it as we are disconnected with the agriculture. Though we consider the economic backbone of the country, but the most important, as we do it with the negativity, I think we are pulling ourselves into the big crisis. So we need to change the farming practices, like it was earlier organic farming in the Vedic era, because you know that in Vedas and the ancient texts, it has been described that the farming techniques that was avoided harmfully, that was avoided the harmful chemicals, natural resources like cow dung, they were using compost, green leaves, and ash water were used to enrich soil fertility. Now we are enriching the soil by chemical fertilizers. Farmers, they are relied on the several cycles. They are relied on the seasonal cycles, rather rainfall and even lunar calendars to plan showing that and harvesting the agriculture, which was also viewed as a scale study. Now, it was earlier also encouraged the mixed cropping and the crop rotation, because you know that the traditional Indian farmers, they were practicing a mixed cropping, that is growing a different crops together, such as the cereals, pulses, and the oil seeds, to ensure that the better soil use, which can minimize the pest attack and provide a dietary diversity. And crop rotation is also being followed to maintain the high fertility and prevent the depletion of the nutrients. And that is what earlier they were using the there was a practice of cow-based sustainable practices, because you know that cow-based central place in Indian agriculture, not only as a source of milk but also a basis of sustainable farming. And that is what a cow dung, which was used to natural manure to enhance the fertility, and cow urine was also being used as a biopesticide for the pest control. And bullock were used for logging, reducing the dependence on the forest fuels, fossil fuels rather. So this kind of system which was created and which was found to be in close loop with the agriculture economy, where the waste was recycled and the productivity which was also being sustained without any external inputs. Now, what agriculture today what we are doing, because you know that we are doing the chemical agriculture, no fertilization, sterility is predominant here, and you know that now we have to import the even agriculture product from the other countries, which we do not know the product from its cradle to grave, and that is what it is very important. So that Ayurveda, which is we normally used to consider Ayurveda for a effective treatment method. So there is a close relationship between the nature and the environment in the Ayurveda, because Ayurveda is the ancient Indian lifestyle system of the medicine, which is being deeply rooted with the nature. It is connected with the nature and the interdependence of the human health and the environment. So medicinal plants and their conservations. Ayurveda is a basis which is based on the use of medicinal plants, many of which are being considered as scared in the Indian traditions. The herbs like neem, tulsi, ashwagandha, amla, brahmi, these were widely used for their healing purposes. Ancient practices which has been emphasized the conservation of forest and the herbs to ensure the continuous availability of the medicines. And that is what the Ayurveda's eco-centric lifestyle they were living earlier, our earlier generations were using. The Ayurveda promotes a lifestyle which is being noted in the ecocentrism, that is towards the ecological balance. And that is what this healing, which is based earlier, the healing which was based on the natural resources. So Ayurvedic healing is there relies the natural resources such as plants, minerals, water, soil, and the climate, and the medicines which are prepared using the herbal formulations, oils, and the what I mean to say, uh, decoctions. They are also prepared minimizing the harmful side effects. The treatment like a panchakarma, which involves a natural process of the detoxification of the using water. Not only water, ghee and the herbs. So this all reflects what? This all reflects the understanding that a true healing, which can only occur within a human domain, which are connected to the nature and the use of resource mindfully. Now, in ancient India, when we are talking about the water management, we all know that water is always being central to the Indian civilization, not only for the survival of the human being, but also survival of the living, but also as a scared element. And here, let me tell you that the ancient India, which is being developed highly on sustainable commodity, which is based on the water management systems, that has balanced the human needs with the ecological reservations. Now, for example, the practices which has reflected a deep environmental wisdom, which ensures the water scarcity in the diverse climatic regions like step wells and bore wells, these bolis, waves and bolis, they were using in North India, which were unique in architectural marvels, which built to the store the rainwater. Then there is tank and the lakes. We call it the Kund and Tal. Kund and Tal earlier, which were constructed across the India to collect the rainwater, and it has been used for the sustainable agriculture. So these water bodies, which are particularly being supported, the irrigation, drinking water, and even the livestock needs. Now, the irrigation system like the flood in Maharashtra, which is being practiced, which is one of the best example of community management irrigation, and it is a century-old method where the divert the river water, canals divert the river water into the agricultural fields, and this system, which is based on the equitable water distribution, because it is very important. This kind of system, so it is based on the equitable water systems. But you know that ensuring that no farmer is deprived of water, and it reflects the principle of shared responsibility and demonstrate the traditional method of achieved water security without a modern technology. Now, when we are talking about the forest management in India, ancient India, because you know that in ancient India, forests which are being often classified into the categories which are based on their use and the cultural importance, like a reserve forest, shared forest, right? Reserve forests which were protected for the royal, royal and the state purposes, such as the hunting, medicinal use, and even timber use of for the construction. And it was stopped unauthorized construction of the cutting of the trees which were prohibited. Then there's the concept of scared forest. Here, in scared forest, we were talking about the Tapovan and Devrai. This Devrai or the Tapovan concept which were preserved, which was for the preserved for the religious and the spiritual reasons. Cutting trees, hunting the animals, and disturbing these areas for the forbidden. Such kind of practices which has helped to conserve the biodiversity and maintain the ecological stability too. Then there's the aranyakas. We call it the forest texts, aranyakas. And you know that there was earlier the concept of the custodian of the forest, king as a custodian of the forest. The concept was like that. It was discussed in that way. Now, the very important part, the role of Buddhism and the Jainism, which has been rooted into the IKS, which was as we all know that when we are talking about the both Buddhism and Jainism, which is being emerged as a spiritual tradition in India, that has been placed through the emphasis on the non-violence, compassion, and the simplicity. So these teachings, they particularly reflected the deep ecological wisdom, promoting the lifestyle that reduces the harm to the nature and encourage the sustainable living. So that Buddhist, they teaching on the compassion to all beings. So Buddhism that teaches us a karuna.
तुमची लाईफ किती आहे म्हणा
Buddhist teaches us a karuna. We call it the compassion. Metta, that is a loving kindness, loving and kindness towards all the living beings, not just as a human being, not just as humans. The principles of interdependence, which highlights that they are all life forms which are connected, and harming one disturb the balance of the whole ecosystems. And that is what the Buddhist monastic or the Buddhist monastic rule. They discourage the unnecessary destruction of the plant, pollution of water, or the harm to the animals. And this compassion-based ethics, which particularly nurtures a sustainable relationship with the nature. So Jainism principle is also like that. Jainism principle is for the non-possession. In Jainism emphasis, here you know that the principle of aparigraha, that is a non-possession, which means a limiting desires and avoiding the overconsumption of natural resources. So by practicing the simplicity and the self-reliance, self-restraint, the individuals, they are reduce their ecological pressures and prevent the exploitation of nature. And that is what these all Buddhism and Jainism, they have vegetarian as a eco-friendly concept. They have emphasized. Both Buddhism and Jainism, they promote the vegetarianism as an ethical and ecological lifestyle, avoiding the meat, which reduces the violence towards the animal, minimizes the environmental degradation, which is being caused by animal husbandry. So the plant-based diet, this conserves the land, water, and the energy, making them environmentally sustainable. In Jainism, as we all know that the strict vegetarian is seen as a religious duty, which is in Buddhism, vegetarian is being encouraged as a practice of compassion and the non-harm. Try to understand me. So in medieval Indian practices, what was there? Like a Balois and the task in the Mughal era. So during the medieval period, India, which has been continued to demonstrate a strong connection between the culture and the spirituality and the environmental conservation as such. Both rulers and spiritual leaders, they contributed to the sustainable resource management, emphasizing the water conservation, greenery, and respect for the nature. Even, you know that these Balois and tanks in Mughal era, they are constructed to store the rainwater and ensure year-round water supply. So this structure, which has been combined functionally with the architectural beauty, this Biolis is not only provided water for drinking but also irrigation, which has helped to recharge the groundwater. Then the Sufficient and their environmental ethics, when we are talking about that, the Sufficient which has emphasized the natural harmony with the nature and the principle of simplicity. Many Sufi saints, they maintained gardens, water sources, and trees, promoting the green spaces for the public benefits. They teach us the Sufi saints, they teach the teaching of the non-exploitation, compassion, the respect for all the life forms, which are being encouraged. Then there are gardens and the green spaces, which are also being used in the medieval by the medieval rulers, including the Mughals, who have constructed the elaborate gardens like a Mughal garden, Bagha garden, such as a Shalimar Bagh and the Mughal garden, which were designed with ecological considerations. Now, when we are calling about the Bhakti movement with the nature, the saint like Kabir, Tukaram, and Mirabai, they have emphasized the devotion, equality, and spiritual connections with the all forms of life. Saints and the poets of this movement, they highlighted the scaredness of nature and the need of human to the living in harmony. The need for human to live in harmony with the nature, with the environment, and that is what it is for the spiritual ecology. Saints like Kabir, Tukaram, and Mirabai, they often spoke about the diverse preserved nature, divine preserved nature. They regarded rivers, trees, animals, and even the landscapes as a manifestation of God. Their teachings, they discouraged exploitation of the nature and they encouraged the humanity, simplicity, and the compassion towards all the living beings. Songs and poems, they are also depicting the harmony with the nature. Bhakti poets, which are being composed by the devotional songs and poems, that also being celebrated with the beauty of forests, rivers, and the mountains. And even spiritual ecology is there. The concept of spiritual ecology, the Bhakti movement, which has been introduced the concept of the spiritual ecology, where the devotion is being expressed through the care of nature, protecting the forest, conserving the water, and avoiding the harm to the animals, which were seen as spiritual duties. And that is what, by linking the human morality and the environmental responsibility, Bhakti Saint, which have provided a model for the eco-friendly lifestyle towards the faith and the culture. Then when we are talking about the Gandhian philosophy and the environment, as we all know that Mahatma Gandhi has provided a modern but timeless preservative this on the environmental sustainability. His idea has emphasized the simplicity, ethical responsibility, and harmony with the nature, highlighting how human beings can live sustainably without exploiting the natural resources. Because you know that then there was a simple living and the medieval consumption. The concept of simple living and the next something is village self-sufficiency. खेडी स्वयंपूर्ण झाली पाहिजे. So this Gandhi emphasized the importance of the Gram Sabha, Gram Swaraj, village self-office, where the villages were envisioned as a self-reliant units, producing their own food, water, energy through sustainable protection practices. Then there is a trustship concept. Trustship concept, which has come. The principle of this trusteeship concept in Gandhian thought, which asserts the natural resources which are collective wealth entrusted to the humans for the responsible use People are the custodian rather than they are the owners of the environment. The concept of the trustee concept of the intent. Now, when we are talking about the modern Indian concept, environmental concept, that movement like a Chipko movement, which we all know that, which was which was done in 1973 in Uttarakhand, which is one of the India's most famous environmental campaign, where the local villages, particularly the women, huge trees to prevent these trees which are being cut down by the contractors, and the movement which has been emphasized a forest conservation, community action, and non-violence protect. Then there is a Bishnoi community conservation that we all know. Bishnoi community is also eager and very serious from the Rajasthan, which has a centuries-old traditions of protecting the wildlife and trees. The Bishnoi all Bishnoi follows a strict principles of the forbid of cutting trees or harming the animals even at the personal risk. That we all know that the the hunting of Kalvit, Salman Khan has been punished because of the Missionary community's concern. Then there is Silent Valley movement. This Silent Valley movement, which was started in 1970s and 1980s in Kerala, which has the aim to protect the silent valleys and forests from which are being submerged by the hydroelectric project, and many scientific activities and the local communities. They have collaborated to preserve these biodiversity-rich ecosystems, preventing the deforestation and the habitat disturbance. So this movement, which has particularly emphasized the ecological importance of the forest, raising awareness about the environmental cost of the unplanned development. Now, we all know that Indian knowledge in the renewable energy, which is being highly recognized. We had a traditional knowledge of water mills, we call it as a GRUTs. India has a long tradition of this renewable energy use, combining the indigenous knowledge with the local resources. Like a traditional water mills were there, and these GRUTs were traditionally, these are the traditional water mills which are being used, like what we see in Aurangabad, the Pawan Chakki, and such kind of water mills we normally used to see in Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, flowing river waters with which was directed to run the water sheets, which powered the grinding of stones for flow. Then there is a solar passive houses in Himalayas. Now we are also using the solar panels. But the traditional use was in Himalayan regions. Villages they were using, they have built the solar passive houses, which are designed to maximize the sunlight in the winter and minimize the heat loss. There also use of the biomass in villages, which was the biomass which was used like a cow dung, crop residues, and wood, which has been traditionally used for cooking and even heating in Indian villages. So that the methods like chulas, like mud stores, and the biogas solar plants, which has been converted to the biomass into the electricity effectively. So these practices, they have reduced the water, then recycle the nutrients, and even provided the sustainable energy solutions for the rural communities. But as you know that they were found to be though effective, but they were not being continued in the next era. As far as the climate change IKS is concerned, you know that the traditional Indian knowledge which contains some valuable insights into the climatic patterns, their adaptation and resilience. The centuries of observations, you know that the folk wisdom and the indigenous practices, they help communities to cope with the environmental variability and extreme weather patterns. So these practices, they remain relevant in addressing the today's climatic change challenges. There are so many challenges today, what we are facing. And earlier there was a traditional weather forecasting. In ancient India, communities, they relied on the alarms like a panchang and careful observations of the natural signs, which were also bird behavior, that is we call it the biomimicry, cloud pattern, wind direction, and even the animal habits to predict the weather changes. So these forecasting methods, they guided the agriculture and even festivals and the water management. Such practices have reflected a scientific understanding of seasonal variations and the climate cycles along the long before the modern meteorological practices. Now, there was also a concept of the practices to cope up with the flood and the droughts in the uh, folk wisdom, because in India, the folk wisdom contains strategies for managing the floods, droughts, and water scarcity. For example, building the raised platform and the granaries is where we used to put the grains to protect the crops and food during the flood, harvesting the rainwater and constructing the tanks, ponds, and step wells to store the water, building in dry places in dry period, and crop selection, which is also a very important factor. Crop selection, which are based on the seasonal predictions and the local soil water conditions, so that there was a sustainable adaptation practices which has been adopted. For example, the in order to promote the sustainability and resilience, mixed cropping and crop rotation, which was maintained, which has maintained soil fertility and reduced risk of the total forest, the total crop failure. Forest and the scaled growth conservation also being regulated the local microclimates. Water harvesting, drought resilient crops, and the livestock management, which has ensured the resource availability during the adverse situations. And that is what it is very, very important that Indian IKS, to study the Indian IKS. For example, Indian festivals and environment. We all know that we normally India we used to celebrate the harvest festivals like a Makar Sankranti and Pongal. Makar Sankranti in North India and Maharashtra, and Pongal in Tamil Nadu, which has marked the successful collection of the crops. These festivals we used to celebrate the human nature interdependence for the human nature interdependence, and that is what these rituals, such as offerings the first grain or boiling new harvest in traditional way of which reflects for the nature and encourage the sustainable farming practices during Pongal and the Makar Sankranti. The eco-friendly symbolism in Ganesh and Durga Puja, they traditionally being used eco-friendly idol made up of clay and the natural materials, which are being highlighting the respect of the for the water bodies and natural resources. Even there are many seasonal cycles which has been celebrated, seasonal cycles celebrated in rituals. Many land festivals or many Indian festivals which align with the seasonal and ecological cycles. For example, the Varsha Ritu, Vasant Purnima, and even the winter solstice, like we call it the Makar Sankranti. These are rituals which are associated with the planting, sowing, and harvesting, connect with the communities to the natural rhythms, reinforcing the ecological awareness and sustainable living. By celebrating the seasonal cycles, The communities normally they used to learn, respect and adapt to the nature's pattern, and that is what they are very important celebrate. This was celebrate. Even today, yoga and environmental consciousness is also IKS because you see that the importance of yoga and Indian practices, for example, which particularly emphasizes the harmony with the body, mind, and the nature beyond the physical and mental well-being. So yoga, we all know that yoga promotes a deep environmental consciousness, encouraging a human to live sustainably and balance with the natural forces. So yoga is a union with the nature. Yoga is a union with the nature. It is yoga means union not only within the self, but also within the universe, and it teaches us that how the humans are integral part of the nature. Our actions impact on the environment. So by forming the awareness of this interconnectedness, yoga they encourages the respect for all the living beings, natural resources and ecosystems. Then pranayams and Surya Namaskar. We all know that pranayam Surya Namaskar, the importance of pranayam Surya Namaskar, which also promotes a sustainable lifestyle, and that is what it is very important. The simple living, modernization, and moderation and mindfulness. These are the outputs of the yoga towards the environmental consciousness. Now, when we are talking about the environmental education in ancient India, we know that we had a Gurukul systems, learning with the nature. In Gurukul systems, students they lived close to the nature in ashrams or homestays. Education included the spiritual, modern, and practical lessons along with the academic subjects. And nature was also being considered a teacher, and students learned to observe the seasonal cycles, water management, plant and animal life, and the other interdependence. So that respect of the nature was an integral part, or was the essential part of the learning. And you know that the lessons under the tree and near rivers, normally earlier the lessons were taught near the under the trees and near the rivers because students often been studied under trees, near rivers and farms, connecting the learning with the natural surroundings. And these outdoors classrooms, they have provided the first-hand experience of the ecosystem, fostering the awareness of water preservation, water conservation, biodiversity, and ecological balance. So that we should realize the value of simplicity and eco-balance. Because ancient education, they emphasize the simplicity, minimal consumption, and ethical living. Students, they were taught to use the resources wisely, recycle them as and when it's possible, and avoid the wastage. Gurukul system has taught us how to sense eco-balance, highlighting the human prosperity that all the way depends upon the well-being of the environment, and that is what it is very important. Now, the inflection of the integration of the IKS with the modern science, so that this Indian knowledge system, which has provided a time-tested ecological wisdom, which can be integrated with the modern scientific methods, which are found to be contemporary with the contemporary environmental challenges, combining the traditional knowledge with the technology, and also research which emphasizes sustainability, resource efficiency, and the resilience. So combining Ayurveda and the modern medicine, and having a sustainable agriculture, different methods like a mixing crop rotation, organic farming, organic mining, water efficient treatment, irrigation, and precious farming practices, soil testing, drip irrigation. This can be done. This is all with the part of IKS. So that we are in the age of smart cities. But you know that earlier also there was a proper traditional water management system was there in concept, like a step wells, using of step wells, tanks, pumps, flood irrigations. They have all enriched the water and they have overcome the water scarcity. And of course, these all systems have reduced the floods and enhanced the groundwater recharge also. Now, nowadays, we all know that Indian government initiatives using the IKS will also be encouraged. There is Ayush Ministry. Through this Ayush Ministry, Ayurveda, Yoga, and Naturopathy, as well as Unani, Siddha, and even homeopathy, which promote the traditional health systems, encouraging the herbal medicines, holistic wellness, and the preventive healthcare practices. By supporting the research, education, and the awareness, the ministry ensures that the sustainable use of medicinal plants, preservation of biodiversity, and eco-friendly healthcare practices that rooted into Indian knowledge. You know that the project like Namami Gange project, which has been launched by the Prime Minister, which is focused on the cleaning and conserving the Ganga River by combining the traditional practices of the river worship, ecological restoration, and community participation. Even there is a national mission on the cultural mapping, which is being also being promoted, which where the documents and that preserves document this mapping preserves and documents the traditional knowledge practices, these festivals and the ecological wisdom. Now, when we are talking about the global recognition for the Indian knowledge in UNESCO, now there is a recognition which has been given for the yoga, Ayurveda, which has been acknowledged as a significant contribution of the India's to the global heritage. Yoga is recognized for the promoting the mental, physical, and spiritual well-being, while Ayurveda provides a holistic healthcare solutions, which are based on the medicinal plants and ecological balance. So this recognition highlights the global importance of the traditional Indian wisdom to the sustainable health practices. So now we are celebrating since 2015 the International Yoga Day that we know, and the United Nations, which has also celebrated the International Yoga Day on 21st of June every year, and this celebration which emphasizes the connection between the humans and the nature. Now there's an interest in the ecological wisdom also, which is being encouraged, which is being growing. The scholars, environmentalists, policymakers, even worldwide, uh, which has grown a growing interest in the Indian knowledge, that to Indian ecological knowledge, which included in the water management, sustainable agriculture, forest conservation, renewable energy, and even traditional practices such as the scaled grooves, rainwater harvesting, and the crop rotation. Now, coming to the last few slides, we know that we are in the age of modernization. There are several challenges in preventing Indian knowledge systems that we know. But you know that as IKS they have offered a valuable insights into the environmental sustainability, health and culture. It faces several challenges in the modern era. But you know that the preservation and integration of IKS, which requires a conscious efforts to protect the traditions and ecological wisdoms. Because we know we are in the age of modernization. But the modernization and the loss of traditions, because you know that rapid modernization, urbanization, and globalization, which led to the erosion of traditional practices. And particularly the younger generations, only lack of awareness, they have a lack of awareness of the ancient ecological knowledge, rituals, and sustainable lifestyles. As a result of what practices, you know that there is a scared grow conservation, organic farming, and the folk-based water management, which are at the risk of disappearing. So that over exploitation of natural resources, that also needs to be avoided. That we should always encourage the sustainable resources. And you know that there's also need for the documentation and revivals, because much of the IKS which exists on the oral traditions, folk knowledges, and even the local custom, making it vulnerable to loss. But as you know that there is a urgent need for systematic documentation, research and revival programs in order to maintain the preserve and protect the IKS in India. Now, when we are looking into the way forward, we need to integrate the IKS into the environmental policy, because integrating in IKS in environmental policy, which incorporation of these IKS principles in national and local environmental policy, which can guide a sustainable resource management, biodiversity conservation, and climatic adaptations. So there should be a policy on the promotional. There should be policy which can promote a the water management, organic farming, forest conservation, and even renewable energy practices. Such kind of integration ensures the time-tested indigenous knowledge, which is which should be a complement to the modern science. So that promoting eco-education in the schools, that is also very important for, because you know that though we are teaching them the values of sustainability, respect for the nature, and ecological responsibility among the student, but the experimental learning through the outdoor classrooms and community projects can be also strengthen this approach. So the most important part, last but not the least, a public participation in conservation. That is very, very important, because community engagement is a key to implement the IKS-based conservation strategies, while encouraging the citizens, local communities, and the NGOs to participate in the forest protection, river cleaning, wildlife conservation, and sustainable agriculture, which will ensure the practical application of the indigenous knowledge. So that the public involvement also promotes ownership, accountability, and a long-term sustainability of the environmental initiatives. I think with this, in order to conclude this, Indian knowledge systems which offers a timeless ecological wisdom, which balances, you know that balance of spirituality, culture, and environment is very essential. So that the nature protects those who protect it. The ancient Indian proverb. Thank you very much. I think with this, I'll stop. If you have any queries, questions, doubts, suggestions, please feel free to share your views with this. Anything for me?
Thank you, sir.
Can I leave?
Hello.
Hello.
Wait, sir. Please wait, sir. Vote of thanks will remain. Yes, madam. Roll number 22. Roll number 22. Hello. May I audible, sir?
Yes.
Please unshare your screen. Screen ये करा unshare करा share.
Okay. Okay.
Very good evening, one and all. Myself, Dr. Devidas Bhagat, currently working as an assistant professor in the Government Institute of Forensic Science, Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar. It's my immense pleasure to propose the vote of thanks of today's lecture, Dr. Satish Patil sir. Satish Patil sir delivered the outstanding, extraordinary talk on the
Sir.
talk on the base
पाच मिनिटं झालं सर खाली.
on the IKS base to IKS and various Maharashtra regional practices are there. So, sir delivered outstanding lecture from the very history of with different Sant community was born in Maharashtra, different type of the art, folks, and different traditions which are in Maharashtra. So, sir, give the very outstanding, knowledgeable lecture, very lucid lecture, and personally I appreciate, sir, at this age from around 3 hours you continuously talk, sir. So heads up your energy, sir, because we people we are the young generation. This is the inspiration for us, sir. And uh, personally from on behalf of the UGC MMTTC, Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar, course coordinator Dr. Manisha Sawant madam, and other staff and all participants. So thank you very much, sir. You give us very informative talk, very lucid lecture, and you enlighten and enrich us. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
ए भाऊ आयला कसला आवाज देतोय
Thank you, sir. Gaurav, sir.
We'll just wait for sir to come. Dr. Devidas is sir coming, Gaurav sir.
Hello.
Sir, is the Gaurav sir coming to address us?
Yes. Within a second.
Okay.
Gaurav, sir, may I audible?